Right, so starting from today until the 30th of October, SABC News will be running a special focus broadcast, Know Your Budget. This is ahead of the midterm budget later this week. Today we want to know what the medium-term strategic framework, or the MTSF, is all about. So before we speak to our guests this morning on this, let's get some lessons from economic students that explain the MTSF.
Medium-term strategic framework outlined the strategies and policies that the government will undertake for the next 5 years, and it sets its goals and priorities of the government. This document is released every 5 years, outlining the goals that the government has to improve not only the economy but also its political and socio-economic environment.
Medium-term strategic framework is a plan that the government uses to outline its development goals over a period of maybe 3 to 5 years. Over this period, the government plans on how it's going to develop its plans on maybe infrastructure, healthcare, and currently the South African government is focused on aligning its medium strategic framework on global goals such as the United Nations Development Plan.
Medium-term strategic framework covers the span of how long that the party is in office, usually 5 years. You have to consider what the priorities are for said party, and then that also gives a guideline of the goals and objectives that they would like to set. So for instance, if they would like to build, or they want to improve the healthcare in the country, they want to build 10 hospitals. Does this go in line with what their priorities are? And then from there, we can break down who is in charge or who is responsible for this region, for that region, who is overseeing the whole thing, what the budget is. So for instance, 3 billion has been set aside to build 10 new hospitals in the next 5 years.
All right, so from the back of those insights, for more, we're joined by Zweli Maziya. He's the CEO of Sovereign Africa Rating, to explain and perhaps add some more context in order to help us understand further what this medium-term strategic framework really is all about. Zweli, good morning. Thanks for your time at the SABC at this hour.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
I was really, from the sentiments echoed there from the students, it seems like they're singing from the same hymn sheet there. So how would you grade them? Are they on track in terms of what the MTSF is all about? How are you going to grade them ahead of exams?
You put me in the spot as a lecturer here. But I think they covered the basics pretty well.
We wear many hats in these discussions, but perhaps delving in further, the MTSF, the medium-term strategic framework, perhaps you could speak to how it is aligned to the medium-term development plan that the GNU is currently working on. Perhaps expand that further for us.
Well, both documents, the medium-term strategic plan as well as the medium-term development plan, they are planning tools used by the government. So basically, the medium-term strategic framework outlines, the government's priorities and actions over that period of 5 years, and it does serve as an implementation plan for the National Development Goals 2030. It also places emphasis on monitoring and evaluating progress. And then when it comes to the medium-term development plan, it's essentially a rebranded and updated version of the MT strategic framework. It just aligns with international conventions when it comes to naming conventions, and it places emphasis on economic and socio-economic outcomes. And also, I think the time frame, the strategic framework would cover the period from 2019 to 2024, whereas the medium-term development plan is covering a period from 2024 to 2029.
All right, thanks for painting that picture, because I actually want to then backtrack a little bit. Speaking about monitoring and evaluation, in the sixth administration, we did hear a lot about plans to address triple threats: poverty, inequality, unemployment. Perhaps you could speak to whether that was part of the ANC's medium-term strategic framework. How aligned are we? How does it also link to the budget allocations that we've seen?
Yeah, it was. It definitely was. Addressing poverty, unemployment, and inequality has been a central focus of the ANC's medium-term strategic framework. for this period up until 2024 from 2019. It outlines several key priorities aiming at, tackling these issues, including economic transformation and job creation, education, skills and health, as well as consolidating the social wage through some reliable and quality basic services.
So given our financial position, perhaps also looking at the budget allocations, what are we likely then to hear from the MTBPS this week, perhaps in relation to the medium-term strategic framework? If we're going to be also looking at low-hanging fruits, as some like to or not like to address that as, what do you think we should be focusing on? Ratings agencies also, how are they assessing our state?
Well, we will be looking at allocation over the next 3 years. We have quite a complex government as well, the governments of national unity. So hopefully they do agree on what should be of high priority. But definitely we can expect the social wage to be quite a significant portion. It's expected to account for around 3.7 trillion over the next 3 years. Job creation and economic transformation is definitely another one. And this would also, include investments in infrastructure, such as roads, bridges, and public buildings, which are crucial for economic growth and job creation. And I think even in the perspective of rating agencies, such as SAR, we definitely look at, especially when it comes to developing countries, the countries that actually invest in infrastructure, especially roads, bridges, the ports, all these ones that assist in terms of economic development. They are crucial, and those countries tend to be much more successful.
Well, Zweli, you're speaking about job creation. I mean, there's a spotlight on the state of our SOEs, structural reforms versus actual implementation, and that was something you alluded to as well. What are investors most worried about at this point as we head into the medium-term budget policy statement?
I mean, we can expect the usual. Number one, the economic outlook, where the finance minister, Godongwana, will, talk about projections for GDP growth, inflation, as well as unemployment. And then, key focus will definitely be the budget allocations to assist in this. However, I think when it comes to South Africa's unemployment issue, it's actually a structural matter. Unlike many developed countries, South Africa didn't invest much in industrialization. So we have an issue, same issue as most African countries when it comes to beneficiation. So I think that's where investment should be going in order to alleviate the unemployment that we have, because the largest portion of it is actually in the semi-skilled sector. When it comes to the unemployment issue.
All right, I think at this point we are playing with an imaginary crystal ball, but it seems like there are some patterns that we can analyze heading into that MTBPS. Thank you, Zweli, at this hour for joining us. CEO of Sovereign Africa Ratings, Zweli Maziya, helping us understand further what that medium-term strategic framework is all about, perhaps also ahead of the MTBPS that's happening this week.